Please, don't kick me, I whispered, clutching my stomach. But their laughter grew louder until I fell. They didn't know the baby I was carrying would change all of their lives and destroy everything they thought was untouchable. If you've ever been humiliated for being kind, this story will stay with you. Watch till the end, because sometimes the one they kick out of the room becomes the one who owns it. Hit like, share, and subscribe, because karma has perfect timing. When people talk about fairy tales, they never tell you what happens after the happily ever after. I used to believe I was living one, until I realized even the most beautiful castle can hide shadows behind its marble walls. My name is Ellie, and I married a man the world calls a billionaire. But to me, Nathan was just the quiet, kind soul who once bought coffee for everyone in a crowded cafe because the barista looked tired. That's the man I fell in love with, not the headlines, not the suits, not the fortune. Just him. But love alone doesn't silence whispers, especially when you come from a world far from theirs. His mother, Evelyn, never forgave him for choosing me. She told me once, in a smile so cold it could shatter glass, "You must be very proud of yourself, dear. Some people spend their lives chasing luck. You simply married it." I remember forcing a smile, even as my hands trembled. Nathan would always defend me, but his mother's words had a way of lingering in the air like smoke. Now, 5 months into my pregnancy, the tension feels heavier. Nathan tries to be present, but business calls never stop. His sister, Clara, visits often, pretending to check on me, but her eyes always scan my clothes, my hair, my hands. "You should rest," she says sweetly. "Pregnancy doesn't suit everyone." I know she means me. Sometimes I wonder if they see me as a person, or just an inconvenience attached to Nathan's name. Yet, every night when Nathan comes home, the way he touches my belly, the way his face softens, that's what keeps me going. He talks to our baby like it can already hear him. "You're the best thing that ever happened to us," he whispers. I smile and believe it, for that moment at least. But deep down, I know something is changing. Evelyn's influence runs deep, and Nathan, though loving, can't always protect me from the subtle cruelty that fills the mansion when he's not around. One afternoon, as I sat by the window sketching little baby shoes, Evelyn appeared behind me, holding an envelope. "The Sterling Foundation Gala," she said. "Your first one as a Sterling wife. Try not to embarrass the family, Her tone was sugar and venom. I hesitated, saying I wasn't sure I should attend. The doctor had told me to avoid stress. But Evelyn smiled. "Don't be dramatic, dear. It's just a little party. Besides, appearances matter." When she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the invitation. I wanted to tell Nathan how her words made me feel small, but I didn't. I just placed my hand on my stomach and whispered, "It's okay, baby. We'll get through this together." And that night, as I folded the simple cream dress I planned to wear, I didn't realize I was preparing not for a celebration, but for a storm that would change everything. The morning of the gala began with an unusual silence, the kind that hums in the air before something breaks. Nathan had left early for a business meeting, kissing my forehead and promising to meet me at the event later. "I want everyone to see the woman who owns my heart," he said before leaving. His words should have comforted me, but they only made the knot in my chest tighter. Because deep down, I knew the world he wanted to show me off to didn't want to see me at all. Evelyn had arranged for a stylist to help me get ready, or at least that's what she said. When the woman arrived, she barely spoke. She handed me a box with a dress folded neatly inside, ivory silk, simple but elegant, but as she helped me put it on, she frowned. "It's too loose," she muttered. "Maybe it's not the right one." Before I could ask more, she hurried away, mumbling about checking with Clara. I brushed off the unease, telling myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there to impress anyone, I just wanted to make Nathan proud. When Clara entered my room, her perfume announced her before her voice did. "You look different," she said, scanning me from head to toe. But I suppose that's the best you can do. She placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled. Don't worry, Ellie. Just be yourself. Everyone loves authenticity. The way she said authenticity made it sound like a weakness. She straightened the dress and whispered, "Try not to look nervous, darling. The guests can smell fear." Then she left, laughing softly as if she'd said something witty. By evening, the mansion looked like a dream. Golden chandeliers glimmered through tall windows, and the sound of violins drifted from the ballroom. My heart raced as the driver opened the car door. Cameras flashed, and for a second, I froze. Then I smiled, remembering Nathan's words, "You belong here because you're with me." Inside, the ballroom felt like another world, polished, glittering, perfect. Waiters glided across the floor with champagne trays, and the scent of roses filled the air. I noticed a few familiar faces, women I'd met briefly at charity luncheons, and they looked at me like I was a misplaced decoration. Evelyn stood near the grand staircase, wrapped in silver silk, smiling as guests approached. When she saw me, her smile didn't falter, but her eyes said everything. Nathan was still caught up in conversation with the investors, leaving me to navigate the crowd alone. I found a quiet corner near the buffet, clutching my glass of water and trying to steady my breathing. That's when I heard it. A soft laugh behind me, sharp as a blade. "Oh, she actually came," one voice whispered. "Look at that dress. Did she borrow it from housekeeping?" 3 women stood together, their diamonds catching the light. Veronica, Lara, and Nina. I knew their names, though we'd never spoken. They were the wives of Nathan's business partners, elegant and cruel in equal measure. Veronica's eyes met mine, and a smile curled on her lips, slow, deliberate, dangerous. "Welcome to the real world, Mrs. Sterling," she said, raising her glass. "Let's see how long you last." And in that instant, I realized this wasn't a gala. It was a test, and I had just stepped onto a battlefield disguised in silk. I tried to keep my composure, even as every gaze felt like a knife pressing into my skin. I wasn't used to rooms like this, rooms where smiles hid cruelty and kindness was treated like weakness. I reminded myself to breathe, to focus on the baby growing inside me. "Just a few hours, Ellie," I whispered in my mind. "Then you can go home." But fate had other plans. Veronica approached first, her perfume heavy, her smile rehearsed. "You must be the famous wife we've heard so much about," she said loudly enough for half the room to hear. Her tone made the word wife sound like a joke. Lara and Nina followed closely behind, like 2 shadows feeding on her confidence. "That dress is interesting," Nina murmured, sipping her champagne. "It's refreshing to see someone so brave, attending a black tie event dressed like a volunteer." Laughter rippled around us. I could feel my cheeks burn, but I forced a small smile. "It's simple," I said softly, "but it's comfortable." Veronica tilted her head. "Of course, darling. Comfort over class. How very humble of you." Then she pretended to trip, spilling her champagne directly onto my dress. The liquid was cold against my skin, seeping through the silk. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed dramatically. "I'm so sorry." The people nearby chuckled. I reached for a napkin, trying to dab the stain before it spread, but my hands trembled too much. "It's all right," I whispered. "Accidents happen." Veronica leaned closer, her breath warm with mockery. "Everything about you is an accident, sweetheart." Her words pierced deeper than the cold stain on my dress. I stepped back, desperate to walk away, but Lara blocked my path. "Where are you going?" she asked, feigning surprise. "We were just getting to know you. You don't want to seem rude, do you?" The sound of glass clinking, laughter, and distant music blended into a cruel symphony. I felt my throat tighten. My baby kicked inside me, a soft reminder to stay calm. But the laughter only grew louder. Veronica suddenly kicked my purse, sending it sliding across the marble floor. "Oops," she said, smiling. Guess it didn't belong here either. I bent down carefully to pick it up, one hand on my belly for balance. But before I could touch it, it happened. A sharp shove from behind, not enough to look violent, but strong enough to send me off balance. My foot slipped on the polished floor, and I fell, hard, landing on my side. A sharp gasp escaped my lips as pain shot through me. My hands instinctively covered my stomach. "Please," I cried out, my voice trembling. "Don't kick me. I'm pregnant." But they only laughed harder, until the laughter stopped. A glass shattered nearby. Then came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. The crowd parted like a wave, and when I looked up, through tears and humiliation, I saw Nathan standing at the edge of the circle. His expression unreadable, his eyes dark with something I had never seen before. For the first time that night, the laughter died. And the silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever heard. For a moment, everything around me blurred. The chandeliers, the murmuring crowd, the glimmer of the marble floor beneath me. My palms were cold, trembling as I held my stomach. I could hear people whispering, but their words were just noise, distant, cruel, meaningless. And then came a voice that cut through everything. "Who?" Nathan said quietly. "Just touched my wife?" The tone wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind of voice that made the room freeze. Even the music stopped mid-note. Slowly, he stepped forward, his shoes echoing across the hall. Every click of his heel sounded like a warning. Veronica's confident smirk faltered. Her champagne glass wavered in her hand. Nathan knelt beside me, his face pale but his eyes burning with rage. He touched my cheek gently. "Ellie, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly, my breath shaky. He looked down at the wine-soaked fabric clinging to my skin and the scattered shards of glass near my feet. His jaw tightened. Then he rose, towering over the crowd, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I'll ask again," he said, scanning every face in the room. "Who laid a hand on her?" No one spoke. No one moved. Finally, Veronica tried to laugh it off. "Nathan, darling, it was just a little misunderstanding." She slipped. That's all. He turned to her slowly, his eyes cold. "A misunderstanding?" He took a step closer, and the silence thickened. "You think pushing a pregnant woman to the floor is a misunderstanding?" Veronica's face drained of color. Lara and Nina backed away, their confidence gone. Evelyn, standing at the far end of the room, looked furious. Not at them, but at me. "Nathan, this is not the place," she hissed. "You're creating a scene." He faced her, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look like her obedient son. He looked like a man drawing a line that would never be crossed again. "The scene," he said, voice trembling with anger, "was when you stood there and watched my wife being humiliated, and did nothing." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's mask of grace cracked. "You're being dramatic," she snapped, but her voice quivered. Nathan pointed at the three women. "Security. Remove them." Now 2 guards stepped forward, but he stopped them midway. "Wait." He looked back at Veronica, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "You've just lost more than your dignity tonight. You've lost every contract your husband's ever signed with my company. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd stayed invisible." The women paled, their arrogance collapsing into fear. Then he knelt again, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "We're going home," he whispered. "You're safe now." As he lifted me into his arms, I caught one last glimpse of Evelyn. Her lips pressed tight, eyes burning with fury and shame. She had wanted to destroy me in public, but instead, she had destroyed her own reflection. And as Nathan carried me out of that glittering hall, I realized something powerful. Silence may look like weakness, but in that moment, it became my greatest weapon. The next thing I remember was the smell of antiseptic and the faint beeping of a monitor beside me. My eyelids felt heavy, and when I finally opened them, everything was white. Walls, sheets, even the light that streamed through the curtains. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach. I held my breath until I felt it, a faint, precious kick beneath my palm. Tears filled my eyes. My baby was safe. Nathan was sitting by the bed, his head bowed, hands clasped together like he was praying. The moment he saw my eyes open, he exhaled a shaky breath of relief and reached for my hand. "You scared me," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, tired, broken in ways I'd never heard before. "You and the baby, you're both okay. The doctor said you just need rest." I tried to smile, but the memory of what happened hit me again, the laughter, the shove, the cold marble floor beneath me. "Nathan," I said softly, "they kicked me. I tried to tell them." My voice cracked. He shook his head quickly, brushing away my tears with trembling fingers. "Shh. You don't have to explain anything. I know. I saw everything." For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. I could see the guilt in his eyes, the kind that cuts deeper than anger ever could. "You trusted me to protect you," he said, his voice low, "and I wasn't there. I should have stopped it before it began." Before I could answer, the door opened. Evelyn walked in, her heels clicking softly against the hospital floor. She was dressed perfectly as always, her pearl necklace gleaming even under the dull hospital lights. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Nathan stood up immediately. "You shouldn't be here," he said sharply. But Evelyn ignored him and placed a bouquet of white lilies on the bedside table. "I'm your mother, Nathan." "Of course I'll be here. I'm just glad it wasn't serious." She turned to me with a polished smile. "Rest up, Ellie. Next time, maybe don't wear such slippery shoes. We wouldn't want another accident." Her words hit like a slap, soft but cruel. I looked away, gripping the blanket tightly. Nathan's face darkened. "Accident?" he repeated. Evelyn blinked, feigning innocence. "Well, what else would you call it?" But the moment she walked out into the hallway, her mask slipped. I could hear her voice through the half-open door. Cold, sharp, unfiltered. Good. Maybe now he'll see what a mistake she was. Maybe he'll finally divorce her before she ruins his name. I froze, every word sliced through me. I turned my head toward the doorway, and there was Nathan, standing still, his expression unreadable. He had heard everything, too. When Evelyn realized it, it was already too late. He looked at her like a stranger and said quietly, "You didn't just try to hurt Ellie. You tried to destroy my family," and for the first time Evelyn had nothing to say. She just stood there, trembling, the queen of the house, dethroned by her own cruelty. Nathan closed the door behind her and turned to me, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "No more pretending. No more silence. From now on, Ellie, I protect you, not just with words, but with action." And as he took my hand again, I knew something had changed forever, not just in him, but in us. The storm had stripped everything away, leaving only the truth. The days that followed felt quieter, yet heavier, like the calm after a thunderstorm that leaves behind broken branches and soaked earth. Nathan stayed by my side every day, refusing to return to work until the doctor cleared me. He barely slept, watching over me and the baby like a man trying to protect something he'd almost lost. And maybe, in a way, he had, not just me, but his faith in his own family. When I finally felt strong enough to stand, Nathan asked if we could take a walk outside the hospital garden. The winter air was crisp, the smell of rain still lingering in the grass. I could feel the tension in his hand as he held mine. "I've spent my life defending people who never deserved it," he said softly. "I thought keeping peace meant strength. But I was wrong. Silence only feeds cruelty." I looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Then break it," I said. "Not with anger, but with truth." That same evening, he made a call that changed everything. A week later, an invitation arrived at the mansion, one sent to every partner, every board member, every socialite who had been at that gala. Evelyn thought it was her event, a family reconciliation dinner, as she proudly called it. She didn't know that Nathan was the one who arranged it, or that the spotlight this time wasn't hers. When we arrived, Evelyn greeted guests with her usual grace, pretending nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek with the same lips that had cursed me. "I'm glad you could come, dear," she said sweetly. "You look better." I smiled politely, feeling the baby move gently inside me, a reminder of what really mattered. Halfway through the evening, Nathan stood up, holding his glass. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Tonight isn't about celebration. It's about accountability." The chatter faded. I saw Evelyn's smile stiffen. Nathan continued, "Last month, my wife was attacked at a gala hosted by this very foundation, an event meant to promote kindness and charity. Many of you were there. Many of you stayed silent." His gaze swept across the room. "But silence ends tonight." A screen lit up behind him, photos from the gala, captured by journalists and internal cameras. There it was, Veronica spilling her drink, Lara laughing, Nina pushing me. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Evelyn's face turned pale. She tried to interrupt. "Nathan, this isn't—" But he raised a hand. "I'm not done, Mother." The word mother hit the air like a blade. "You wanted to teach my wife a lesson in humility. But the only lesson learned that night was yours. That cruelty, no matter how dressed in pearls, is still cruelty." Then came the final blow. Nathan turned to me and smiled softly. "Starting today, Ellie will lead the Sterling Foundation's Women's Welfare Initiative. Her first project, a campaign supporting mothers who faced abuse and discrimination." The room erupted in applause, but I stood frozen for a moment, tears filling my eyes. Evelyn sank slowly into her chair, her empire crumbling in silence. The very people who once praised her now avoided her gaze. When Nathan reached for my hand, I took it. He leaned close and whispered, "You turned humiliation into strength, Ellie. You didn't just survive, you transformed that night. I walked out of that mansion, not as the outsider everyone pitied, but as the woman they could never again underestimate. The girl they had kicked had learned how to rise, and rise with grace." The night after the event, I sat on the balcony of our home, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. The air was cool, and the gentle movement inside my belly reminded me that life, my life, was moving forward. Nathan joined me quietly, placing a warm cup of tea beside me before sitting down. He didn't speak at first, he just looked out at the skyline, as if letting the silence do the healing. "I keep thinking about that night," he finally said. "I wish I'd stopped them sooner." His voice was low, filled with guilt. I turned to him, placing my hand on his. "You did," I whispered, "not with words, not with anger, but with truth. That's what lasts longer than revenge." He smiled faintly, and for a while we just sat there, listening to the distant hum of the city. "You changed me, Ellie," he said. "You taught me that strength isn't about how loud we can be. It's about how deeply we stand by what's right." His words warmed me more than the blanket ever could. I looked down at my belly and felt a calm pride I hadn't known before. "This baby will never grow up in fear," I said softly. "They'll grow up knowing that kindness isn't weakness, and silence isn't surrender." Nathan reached out, brushing a tear from my cheek. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met," he said. "You've turned pain into something beautiful." The following weeks passed gently. Veronica and her friends vanished from society, publicly shamed for what they had done. Evelyn retreated from the foundation, her reputation damaged beyond repair. She didn't speak to us for a long time, but when she finally did, it was different. She came one afternoon, standing in the doorway, her voice trembling. "Ellie," she said quietly, "I was wrong." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, this woman who had caused so much pain, and saw not a villain, but someone who had finally learned humility the hard way. "You can't undo the past," I said gently, "but you can choose to be better in what's left of it." She nodded slowly, and for the first time, her eyes softened. Maybe forgiveness doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from letting go. Months later, our baby was born. When Nathan placed her in my arms, tears filled my eyes. She was tiny, warm, and perfect. In that moment, everything made sense. Every insult, every tear, every humiliation had led to this, a life that began not in hate, but in hope. I looked at her tiny face and whispered, "You'll never have to beg to be seen. You'll never have to cry, 'Please don't kick me,' because your mother stood up once, and that changed everything." Nathan leaned in and kissed my forehead. "You didn't just survive, Ellie," he said softly. "You became unforgettable." And as I watched the sunrise paint the sky gold, I smiled, not for the world that once looked down on me, but for the world I was building for my child, because in the end, they didn't just kick me out, they kicked me awake. And now, I will never bow again. If this story reminded you that grace can be more powerful than revenge, hit like, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs strength today. Subscribe for more stories where love wins, justice speaks, and kindness never loses. Because sometimes being silent isn't weakness, it's preparation for your loudest rise.